What's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Tuesday, not Monday, it's Tuesday, getting closer to Friday. Always looking towards the Friday. September 19th, 2023. It is about 11:39 a.m. here, California time. Latest activity looks like a 2.1 in California. We have seen quite the uptick here across the West Coast in the last 24 hours. Kind of watching a swarm of activity here last night, kicking up just outside the Patterson area. Now, it all started off yesterday with a 4.0, and then it just kind of increased slightly throughout the early evening up to a 4.5. That has been the largest so far in this sequence of earthquake activity here outside the Patterson area. It's a ways away from the San Andreas Fault. Thinking that may have popped off on the Great Valley Thrust Fault. There's really no information on it as far as from the USGS goes. Sometimes they put out little response in regards to an earthquake. But nothing on this one. It was broadly felt across the area of California here, around Modesto northward, Sacramento down even to Fresno area. Quite a few reports from folks that are feeling some light to moderate shaking. Now, again, that's still, I don't know if these are main quakes or if these are foreshocks or what they are. It's a little questionable when we see earthquake activity here at just some random magnitudes with really no main quake, obvious, right? Sometimes we'll see that type of activity on the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault, which sits down here. But this is, again, off of the plate boundary. The last earthquake reported in this area was about 3 o'clock this morning, a 3.1. But this is just an overall heightened movement event out here across the plate boundary itself and inland. We did see some further activity up north here. Let me pull up the 2.5 map and above and show you guys. Did see a handful of earthquakes above the 2.5 threshold following this elevated movement yesterday with a 3.3 and also 2.7 here into the area of the Gorda Plate, the extreme southern edge of the Gorda Plate. So I think things are pretty well pressurized out here, so to speak, locked. Obviously, we know the Cascadia is locked. Portions of the San Andreas Fault down here across the southern branch are well overdue. And it's been a little while since we've seen any major earthquake activity up here across the northern edge as well. So things are getting a little interesting here across the plate boundary of California. Also, further south of the Patterson area, we did see some movement with this earthquake right here yesterday, 3.0 on the San Andreas Fault, and then last night, 2.6 and a 3.1 down here in Southern California. So overall trend across California for now has been elevated up and down the plate boundary. Really hasn't affected anything further up north across the Pacific Northwest, but they're not really on that plate boundary here, such as the San Andreas Fault that ends up here at the Mendocino Triple Point Junction. And up here, well, these guys got their own fault systems, but the plate boundary itself sits well offshore. That's the Cascadia Subduction Zone, which is that's another one kind of have to worry about. The tremor map here from yesterday. See how many tremors we had. Well, 336 epicenters of tremor up and down the board here. This is day number 5 or 6 of somewhat elevated tremor counts. Now, we could easily see over 1,000 or so in each day, as events in the past has shown us. We haven't really seen a large-scale event in a little while, since about October of last year. We've seen a couple smaller events here where we've seen 500 to 600 per day for a very short amount of time. But these spikes here on the graph show us the peak of the tremor counts. And this year, well, within the last year since October, we've only had a couple smaller events. And it looks like we're having, even a smaller one right now with this 300 and something epicenters of tremor along the Cascadia here over the past week or so, giving us a total tally of, let's see what we got here, about 1,669 epicenters of tremor. Not volcanic tremor, but earthquake tremor. Well, I don't like using that term earthquake tremor because this is, I guess they call it a slow slip event. Kind of a slow vibrational. The only thing I can think of is rub between the two plates here. You got the Juan de Fuca plate being subducted underneath the North American plate. The only thing that's going to create this tremor, this movement, is pressure, right? It's not going to just sit there and create tremor. There's got to be a source behind this that's creating the strain further downstream. And when you get that slippage, so to speak, here, down dip into the Cascadia subduction zone, that creates these slow slip tremors. But also at the same time, that's adding strain up here across the locked area of the Cascadia. And it's pretty well covered. There's a portion up here across Vancouver region, Vancouver Island ranges, that's not covered as far as the tremor activity goes. But this is where most of the strain tends to build up. So it's hard to say if this is leading to something along the Cascadia. We did see some elevated movement along the northern edge of the Cascadia subduction zone over the past week or so. Let me bring up the last 7 days up here at the northern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. Now remember, that extends up here right around the Queen Charlotte Sound area, and you follow this red plate boundary line all the way down into Northern California. That's the entire length of the Cascadia subduction zone, and that is very capable of producing a 9.0 or greater earthquake, pretty much mimicking what happened over here in Japan, if not maybe on a larger scale basis when it comes to the tsunami potential. A lot more land that it covers out here. As far as the inland tsunami potential across the Pacific Northwest. So with this activity up here, elevated tremor count, now activity here across the West Coast lighten up over the last 24 hours. Yeah, it definitely looks like this area is of concern right now for some potential movement, further movement than what we're seeing right now. So I'm continuing to keep up the earthquake watch here for the California area for now until activity dies down. Whenever there's unusual movement or increasing seismic activity on a kind of a larger scale out here across the West Coast, that's when I think we need to be on alert and on guard. So we'll keep that earthquake watch up here for a little while. Within the last hour or so, still seeing some movement on the plate boundary, the 2.1 here on the San Andreas Fault. Pretty much see this looks, if you look at these maps every day like I do, I'm actually looking at them almost 24/7. These and the graphs and everything else that I have pulled up here. Always watching these graphs, always watching the seismograph stations here. And, it's safe to say that everything's been somewhat elevated out here across California here in the last 24 hours. And then, again, when you throw in this activity up here along the Cascadia that we've seen a couple days ago, yeah, it's good to be on guard here. So activity still continuing there across the San Andreas Fault, Southern California. We did see that 3.1 early this morning near Fontana. That was followed up by a couple smaller earthquakes as well, and also somewhat active here across the San Jacinto Fault Zone. The southern branch of the San Andreas Fault looks quiet for now, but that's the one that we have to worry about. We start seeing some major swarming around this area. It's definitely would be an eye-opener. All right, let's check out the Mount St. Helens area. They're still having some earthquake activity up there as well. In the last 24 hours, it looks like about 7. Not a big deal, but if you put together the whole numbers here over the last 30 days or so, we're talking about 150 earthquakes or above that multitude of quakes at Mount St. Helens. And it's right smack dab up at the crater area of Mount St. Helens. From what I know, they say that earthquake activity is typical like this on any volcano. It doesn't look like we're seeing any elevated emissions. Let's go. Speaking of that, let's go check that out here real quick and see what we got for Mount St. Helens. We'll zoom over here real quick. Hope everyone's enjoying their Tuesday. Not bad here in California. We've got about 78 degrees. Only supposed to be about 85 or so. Nice little cool down here for us in the Northern California area. So zoom in here and check out the gas emissions. That's going to be this cloud here. And this gives us a good indicator: wind speed, air relative humidity, vent temperature, right? That's also something to pay attention to if there's magma stirring up below, but not all the time. most of the time we'll see gas being elevated. Carbon dioxide here looks about the same far as average goes. We did see a little spike in sulfur dioxide. Obviously, that's a sign of some volcanic activity. Right about the time the earthquake activity happened in earlier this month, back in the 1st of September. It has since died down, but the earthquake activity really hasn't. Looks like we may be going up here right now, a little spike in the last day or so. So we'll continue to watch that sulfur dioxide emission from Mount St. Helens for any further elevated activity. Right now, I just think it's just showing a little bit of signs of earthquake activity. And what is stirring it up? Well, I don't know if it's volcanic, like magma underneath, or if this is just maybe some elevated gas emissions underneath here that are stirring up the earthquake activity. Now, to see the GPS, let's go over here to, I think this is the one I want. Maybe not. I got so many windows up here, but they're all important, right? I guess I'm a hoarder when it comes to the term, or when it comes to browser websites. Goodness. Some of these are working, some are not. This one here looks like it is working. If you look at the graph here, that's original, cleaned. It's going to be clean. Original will pick up some, I guess, instrument adjustment, but the cleaned plate. Now that's a little bit different. Look at that east. Those only changed those two, but okay. The one that we're looking at, though, for the most part, is going to be the vertical displacement. And overall trend has showed a gradual decline in inflationary measurements there for Mount St. Helens. And this goes to, this is 2022. These are 2-year intervals, so 2023 going to be right about here or so. So it looks like this is definitely up to date, but I'm not seeing any, trends that are showing uplift. Now, if we've seen that, along with the earthquake activity and elevated gas emissions, I would be taking a drive up there to cover this. But right now, I don't see anything that would point towards, elevated volcanic activity, magma movement, and stuff like that below the surface. The earthquake activity, they happen. They happen at Mount Hood. They happen at Mount Rainier. And there's a little bit of earthquake activity there as well. And so we'll just watch it, see if anything else picks up there or not. California just lighten up. Look at that. Goodness. Yellowstone National Park. That's a super volcano. Really nothing of concern there, I don't think. We'll just double check it, though, and see what we got. Not really seeing any earthquake activity. This event last night, I was pretty certain that's going to be some weather events out there. Excuse me. Let me see. And I say that because a lot of times these thunderstorms pop up there across the Yellowstone National Park area. And I don't know if we're going to be able to go back that far. Last 12 hours, it's really not going to. But I think they had seen some thunderstorms out here late. This goes back 12, or let's see here. Hello. All right, let's give it a second, see if this is going to kick up or not. I'm pretty certain it is. We've checked it before, and it looks like there's some remainder of some storms up there. I don't know why this shouldn't take that long, right? Really shouldn't take that long. I'm not going to wait here all day. But yeah, and that activity shown up there on the graph is older than 12 hours. So it looks like there was some residual storms out there that created this. And again, if we see it pop up today, we'll check out the radar and see if we can compare that signature with what's going on in the environment around this station. Seismograph stations are very sensitive. They can pick up large earthquakes on the opposite side of the world. Vibrations that travel through the earth not only from earthquakes, but also machinery, tractors, weather, thunderstorms. You got the rolling thunder. That all creates signatures such as this here. Earthquake activity is going to look well defined like this. These little spikes. And there's not a whole lot of them right now there across the Yellowstone area. All right. The rest of the country, handful of quakes. Oklahoma and western Texas out there. Let's see what else we got. Pretty good clutter out here across the Japan region. Although most of this activity here from yesterday. Late last night we did see a 5.8 here into the Izu Islands. The Izu Trench, very shallow earthquake. But remember, we did see a little bit of deeper scale movement quake here along this plate boundary. This here is one plate. That's going to be the Filipino plate. And the general strain out here across this area of the Filipino plate, these earthquakes are occurring near Japan. You get deeper movement quakes here into the trench areas. That adds strain back along the subduction zone. If there's enough strain up here, then we get earthquake activity. If there's not, we'll see some of that pressure and migrate over across this area along this region of the plate boundary. So it looks like there's definitely enough strain up here potentially for some further movement across this area just off the coast of Japan. Continue to watch that. For movement across the rest of the world, let's see here. What do we got? A couple earthquakes there in Indonesia. That's very common. Check out the EMSC model globe and see what we got. There's always going to be earthquake activity out here. Remember, 2s and 3s, even some 4s. And I really don't see anything elevated too much going out here across the Java Trench region. A couple quiet zones may have to watch. Did have some activity into China. I believe that's up into China. Let's see here. We're outside Tajikistan area. Looks like that may be right on the border along with Afghanistan, 4.6. Over here in Poland, they had an earthquake as well earlier this morning. Shaking things up out there, 4.6. Is that Rudna, Poland, 5 kilometers deep. And the EMSC model here showing a little bit of aftershock activity following that 4-pointer in Poland. But not really elevated out here across the Mediterranean today. Things look a little calmer. Not seeing a huge cluster of 2s and 3s, which may or may not be a good thing. 3.8 down here off the plate boundary near Morocco. Still seeing some aftershock activity following that larger event here a week or so ago. South America, pretty good cluster of pancake earthquakes here. That's a major subduction zone. Always seen earthquakes. This is one of the more active zones out here. 4.1 from yesterday, but again, there's some smaller quake activity happening below that threshold of the 4.0 magnitude level. Alaska, minimal movement to say the least. Couple smaller quakes here. Well, a couple, I should say, larger than a 2.5 up here, down here around the Aleutian Trench, Sandpoint area, and 3.2. It looks like a couple of those from yesterday. Big Island of Hawaii. Had someone asking me how come I don't cover Hawaii. Well, actually, we cover it a lot. There might be a time or two when I forget about it because it's out there in the Pacific Ocean, but earthquake activity right now in general is confined to the Pahala area with the stoppage of the Kilauea volcano. Let's go see what we got going on for the latest information statement here on the Kilauea volcano, which again took a pause, or maybe it completely stopped. The USGS is saying that it's unlikely to restart, so they must know something I don't. It stopped there on the 16th, only lasted there for about 5 or 6 days. Pretty short eruptive activity. We did not expect the eruption to resume based on the behavior of past short-lived Summit Fissure eruptions back in these dates right here, which all ended abruptly. So doesn't look like things will kick back up here for now. There's always going to be, of course, some volcanic gases, but it doesn't quite look like there's any, magma coming out of those fissures up here, those volcanic vents that we seen back when the eruption was happening. A good idea, that we might want to pay attention to if we think things are going to stir back up is watching for earthquake activity, watching for swarming again around this area, watching for deeper movement quakes that would indicate further magma rising up to the surface. That would basically tell us that we're looking for maybe another eruption sometime soon. But right now that's not happening. But we'll continue to watch that there across the big island of Hawaii. New Zealand. Let's go over here and check that real quick. This area has been somewhat quiet, eerily quiet. If you really look at the plate boundary here across the Tonga region, Kermadec Trench, these areas have been quiet for a couple days now. So that's going to fill in. We've seen quite a bit of movement here westward along this plate boundary and adjacent plates up here to where I think this could move here really soon. It never stays quiet for too long. But the GeoNet servers, let's see, where do we go? Here we go. Make sure this is, I think we got the most recent one. 2.7 yesterday, 3.0 2 days ago. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot going on here across New Zealand. Why? I don't know. It's just quiet. That can be a good and a bad thing. There's that 3-pointer there from yesterday. Again, just, sitting along a major plate boundary, it's expected to see some twos and threes, and also some larger scale movement, which we really haven't seen for New Zealand in quite a while. So just watch this plate boundary. And again, I think focus right now is out here along the west coast with this elevated movement. We'll continue to watch that. And this all kind of coincides with the elevated space weather activity. Crazy. Seen auroras down into quite a few of the northern tier states. Even some folks there in Nebraska. Seen some aurora pillars on the horizon, northern horizon. Pretty cool. Really cool, actually. I think maybe even into Washington. I'm not for sure if they've seen that or not up there. But Montana, definitely. Heard some folks there in Colorado as well, seen the auroras. And that was thanks to a CME that kicked up. KP index up around the 7 or so. G2 class storm. Or G3. Kicked up to a G3 class storm. Goodness. So, of course, in those type of setups, those auroras do extend pretty low into the states. Right now, looks like things have backed off slightly here. Not seeing that much of an effect on the auroras up there. There's still some light conditions prevailing, which will probably be lasting for a little while. But goodness, it kicked up into the G3 class. That's crazy. One of these days, we'll get to see it down here in Northern California. Just a matter of time. All right. Let's look at flare activity. See what we got here. Quite a few new sunspots being welcomed out here across the eastern limb of the sun. Looks like the majority of them have names now. Got some newer sunspots out there as well. Let's check out the latest magnetogram image, which is going to be this one right here. Don't have the names, but we do have the latest info on their magnetic structure here, and that's what we got to watch for, some stronger flaring. This area right here does look quite dynamic, and that is gearing up to be a bullseye shot of the Earth. If that does pop off any large flare or any large CME, that will be directed at Earth completely. Once this gets into view here, a little bit closer into the Earth-Sun plane. And a few more sunspots over here look like they may be growing, but those are drifting off towards the western limb. And again, some newer ones way out here across the eastern limb. That this one doesn't look all that fancy, but we'll continue to watch these areas as they continue to evolve. But right now, I think we're going to watch this one right here, this little sunspot. This area right here looks kind of it's small and a little rinky-dink, but it does look. Yeah, I guess we'll have to keep an eye on it. Looks like it's grown overnight. Look at that. This was last night. And if you look at today's, look at that. Getting more complex right there. So keep an eye on that sunspot. Right now, does it even have a name? It doesn't. See how these things just pop up out of the blue like that? So we'll watch that. Right now, threat level 95% chance for a C flare. M flare at 20. I'm going to say 60. X flare around 1%. We'll continue to watch these though and see how they develop. All right, Storm Prediction Center. Any severe weather threat today? Looks like a slight risk for some severe weather across portions of Texas and Oklahoma, with a 2% chance of tornado probability out around the OKC area, Abilene, Norman, Wichita Falls, and Lawton, Oklahoma, all in that 2% range. Main threat, and Texas can do it, is put down some large hail. We got a hatched area. We're talking about 10% or greater probability of 2-inch diameter hail or larger within 25 miles of a point. Now, you don't have to have 2-inch diameter hail to do some damage, but it looks like that probability is quite high out here today across portions of Oklahoma and Texas. If you are out there today and at home, make sure you put your car in the garage or underneath the outside carport. That's one thing I notice out there. A lot of people have those outside carports, and that's, those hangings there to protect their vehicles from large hail, which happens quite often in the Texas and Oklahoma area. Texas can do it, that's for sure. All right, numerical models out here. Let's go ahead and check out the latest symbol here. I'm looking at some long-range models that tells us areas of interest, with blue being low pressure, troughing, cooler weather, potentially wetter. Orange up here, which is going to be up into Canada. Hopefully it stays up there. Sorry, guys. Not a big fan of the heat. And that includes some hot and dry conditions up there. But here along the Pacific Northwest and California, we're getting a nice trough coming down here, deepening somewhat for a little bit over almost the entire western states out here. That's quite nice for this time of year, dropping temperatures well below normal, and even a chance of rain or snow. Snow probably will be reported up in the higher elevations of the mountains across California and other areas out here. But I'm looking forward to the cooler weather. It'd be nice. And that gets squashed and moved along, and then it looks like, oh man, look off the deep, very deep trough of low pressure out here across the Pacific Northwest. Really dark blue, adding maybe some further rainfall threats and some cooler weather again as we end the month of September. How's that? This does not look good, though, for these guys across the eastern portion of the country and up into Canada. It's just going to cook up there, it looks like. No signs of fall for the folks out there. Well, this is a ways out. Hoping this changes, because I don't like this big blob of orange here across the west coast. But if that does play out, then we could see troughing occur over here, bringing some cooler weather. But again, we'll continue to watch that. It's a ways out. Either way, enjoy the cooler weather out here across the west coast if you are out here like me. And we'll catch you guys back here a little bit later. Again, I do have a few stations, seismograph stations here, monitoring earthquake activity across the west coast. The Parkfield station right here is about the closest one to this earthquake activity there that we're watching right there. But for the most part, this Parkfield station will pick up a lot of earthquake activity there around California. Right now, it doesn't look like a whole lot of movement. Southern California is this station here, Barrett. That's outside San Diego region. A couple spikes occurring on that one, but nothing big. And we'll just kind of watch this, see how it goes today. Just quite elevated here over the last 24 hours for California. So we'll keep that earthquake watch going, and just make sure you guys have an earthquake plan. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later tonight, or unless something major happens, we'll talk to you then. Have a good one.